You already knew that this video is going to be coming out. Morgan is one of my favorite units in the entirety of Fate, like as the whole franchise, and she's my number one A1 wifey, so you know if she's coming back out, I gotta make a simp video for her. You know, I gotta get out here and shill to the masses on why you should be going for Morgan, because she does everything. You want her for farming? She's got that. You want her for CQs? She's got that. You want her for Immortal teams? She's got that as well. There is nothing that she can't do, except for maybe a good amount of damage at NP1 without her power mods, but we don't talk about that. Morgan slander will not be tolerated over here on the channel. And I will say that some of the more recent CQs that we've been getting over on the NA version, especially the exhibition quest for the Lotto, did actually give me more of an appreciation for how good she is. I mean, one of the most random things that I never thought I would care about is the curse on her NP actually kind of mattering a little bit for that stall crab fight. That was just something I never thought that I would say, huh, that's actually useful, but I finally found a use for it in that boss fight. So I can quite honestly say everything about her is actually good. There is no wasted potential here with this servant. So strap in, get comfortable, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment in the comments down below about how you feel about Morgan. But first, you know, let me go ahead and yap for a little bit and talk about why this servant is worth considering. Now, obviously, if you do have Koyenskaya and you have Oberon, she can actually be a very effective buster looping servant, with the fact that she does technically have a 50% battery if you take her first and second skills into account, and she can do some pretty decent damage being able to loop that first skill back to get the defense down on wave 3. Sometimes if you have to burn it for wave 1 and you don't have her for wave 2, things can be a little bit more dodgy. My interpretation of using Morgan might be a little bit different than some people's, because I'll do max K-scope farming, so I can actually just fire the first skill on turns 2 and 3 using the Atlas Academy Mystic code. So the two larger nodes, I get the attack buff and the defense down, so your mileage might vary a little bit if you're going to have to use her for waves 1 and 3 instead of it for 2 and 3 like myself. And there is the elephant in the room that if you do have her at only NP1, her damage can be quite lacking and leaves a lot to be desired if you're not fighting at least a round table or Fey member, or more ideally, a man attribute enemy, because that's her largest power mod. If you can get your grubby little mitts on that, her damage is actually quite solid. Because also keep in mind, she's a berserker, you can bring her wherever you want to kind of just trash all the men in your area. But I will say it's still not like the worst damage possible, as I do have her at NP1 over on the JP version of the game. It's not the prettiest, but it still can get the job done, especially on the, you know, 90 and lower nodes. Like, she will be perfectly fine for that. 90 plus, it gets a little bit dodgy. You definitely are probably going to want to have, say, the power mod going for her. And then 90 plus, if you don't have her at higher NP copies, even with the man attribute power mod, she's going to leave a bit to be desired. So she is one of those servants that I would say, if you plan on making her one of your main farmers, like you're not just summoning for her because you think she's cute or you like her story and you just kind of want to have her in your Chaldea, if you're going for her to actually use as a farming servant, you do probably want to at least try to hit that NP2. It'll make those non-power mod nodes just not hurt as much. But if you're just going to be using her for CQs or the Immortal team comp that she's kind of created, then you can't just go with NP1, because sure, having the higher NP copies will allow you to kind of get through some of these fights a little bit faster, but the whole point of the Immortal team comp is that you're not trying to rush and beat down the fight, you're just trying to sustain your way through the boss battle. And Demeter is known for having quite a lot of sustain herself, you know, having the high defense and the high regen. I, on the JP version of the game, used the Immortal team comp with my NP1 Morgan and was able to out-sustain the Demeter, not just with the NP. That's where her third skill comes into account, because her crit damage is not based on, you know, her NP level. It's not like she gets a crit damage buff if she's NP5 or something along those lines. Her crits will always hit as hard as they will hit, you know, no matter what NP she is. And her crits are deceptively strong. Do not forget that she does get to use people like Merlin for the big hero creation buff. You're going to be doing very nice buster crits, especially if you have a buster NP lead. And the 30% crit damage you would think doesn't really do a whole lot, but her crits surprisingly bite pretty hard. It might also be because she's lowering the enemy's defense, does have a solid attack buff, so her crits can really go through. But you'd be surprised how much crit damage you're able to put in with this servant. You'd think she'd be a bit weaker, but 30% is actually pretty fine, which, again, has kind of shifted my view on every servant that's going to be a crit servant needing to have at least 50%. Some of them I'm like, okay, well, if they have 30%, Morgan can actually do some pretty good damage. Again, keeping in mind that she is a berserker, so she's kind of super effective against everybody, so that definitely does help, but, her crits can kind of bite a little bit. There's also the fact that in those team comps, she brings a lot to the table, namely her second skill and the overcharge effect on her own NP, giving the entire party one stage of overcharge to everybody. That's very crucial, especially because you're probably going to put Morgan in the front spot of an NP chain, because frequently in some of these setups with, say, Merlin and Castoria, you'll have all three of their NPs ready to go, with Castoria giving everybody 30% on her first skill, Merlin giving you 5 to 10% NP if you started stacking his own NP on top of itself as well. You'll be firing your NP with some decent frequency, and you'll be able to get those triple NP chains. You put her in the front, that's already going to overcharge everybody to 200 and 300% that follow her, because that's how chaining NPs work in FGO. But then you also increase that by 1 for everybody because of the overcharge effect. So it's really, really nice. Getting extra hits of solemn defense on Castoria's NP, getting the extra crit stars, because like I said, her crits are very nice. You get those extra crit stars on Merlin's NP. She just makes the team flow very well by giving everybody NP gain as well on her second skill. And you can even donate that second skill to somebody else. Say you really need Castoria's NP because you need an immediate buff cleanse. You can just dump that 20% onto Castoria instead of giving it to herself to try to help her get to her NP a little bit faster. I mean, overall, there's not many qualms that I unironically have with Morgan. I know that I am the big Morgan simp. Everybody knows that I love Morgan a lot. She's one of my favorite characters in Type Moon. And in terms of being a waifu servant, I think she is my #1, followed closely by Jalter, to some respect to her. But there isn't a whole lot that I have that I think is bad about Morgan. Like, if you were to ask me, ZTO, how would you buff Morgan tomorrow? Like, if Lasangle said you are allowed to give her any buff that you want, I feel like I would just give her an NP upgrade so people would leave her alone about her NP1 base damage. That unironically might be what I do, because I don't think there's anything else that she needs. She checks the boxes of even current meta servants that you want to have. Being able to have at least a 50% battery, she's got that. Having her own attack buff, she's got that. Team utility with her NP and her second skill, she's got that. Technically even more with the attack and crit down that she has on her third skill that applies every single turn. She's got that in spades. Survivability, she has a guts, which is really nice for bosses that might have pierce invincibility or something. Say you only have illusion ready to go, or you're going to be using her with double Koyanskaya because you want to try to burst down the boss. Having her own survivability that's a guts is super nice, because let's say you throw the Atlas invincibility on them, you break the boss's bar and they're like, haha, actually I was going to give myself pierce invincibility anyway. You could just still face tank that with the guts, and it's very, very nice. I mean, modern servants, you want to have, a really strong power mod, usually man or earth, realistically, but the fact that she not only has that, but little side gimmicks for the Fae and Knight of the Round Table, which are semi kind of consistent enemies that you'll see. You kind of see like a Gareth or a Gawain, a Lancelot and Artoria. You see them around. Same thing for like Barghest and Melusine. Like sometimes you'll see them in Node. Sith occasionally, I think. Especially now that they have their summer versions, I imagine they'll probably start appearing in more free quest nodes, because now you have double the chance of running into one of them. Same thing kind of goes for Morgan herself, because you also now have Ace the Savior running around. You got Habitrot. You've got some really good targets here, and I know that Knight of the Round Table and Fae aren't the two most large categories of servants, but you add them together as side niches for Morgan, and you get a decent chunk of servants. So my advice, if you're going to summon for Morgan because you want to use her as a farmer, probably at least go for NP2. Or at least already have, say, double Koyanskaya Oberon, because you're really going to want that Oberon third skill buff to overclock her damage. But if you just want to use her as a CQ fighter, you just want to use her for the Immortal team comps, then going for NP1 is perfectly fine. It's not going to hurt you at all to go ahead and go for that. So let me know if you're going to be summoning for Morgan, and even if you're not going to be summoning for her, at least let me know what you think about the unit in the comments down below. And again, I will be as annoying as I can every single time that Morgan comes out. I will always drop videos talking about Morgan, because hey, you gotta rep your favorite servants. Gil came back. I also made a video on him as my favorite character in all of Type Moon. I had to pay respects to the king. And of course, at the end of the video, I'd like to go ahead and shout out my patrons for helping just a little bit more than you, my dear viewer, are already doing. Shoutouts to Vadi, Zernatori, Trinity, Silent, and Genix. Your further support is greatly appreciated. And if you would also like to get shouted out at the very end of the video and even kind of get some bonus content every now and then that I drop over there on the Patreon, you can click that link in the description down below and join. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace, late guys.